Hi there. When you're looking to migrate your infrastructure into the cloud, there are generally two areas of concern that pop up time and time again. These include your applications and group policy objects. So in this video, we're going to look at how you collect your group policy objects, analyze them within Microsoft Intune, and look at the options available to you. So let's pop in and get started. So the first thing to say really is that there are many resources out there on the internet that give you a rundown and description of how you can achieve this. I've just picked one here, so rather than go into detail on my own environment, I've selected a blog here which goes through the details of what you need to do and capture your group policy as an example. So firstly, what you need to do is launch your group policy management within your own environment. Okay, you navigate to the group policy objects and then select a GPO for examining. And then what you're going to do is right click that GPO and do a backup. You select your destination and then you're going to take a copy of what is the GP report.xml file, and that's the report file that we're going to use to import into our Intune environment. So let's pop over to Intune. I'm in the Microsoft Endpoint Manager Admin Center here. I'm going to go to Devices, and then I'm going to go to the Group Policy Analytics. Now take note that it is in preview still at this time that I'm doing this video, but I'm expecting it to become or to be released on general release fairly soon. And there has been some recent updates to this which I'll highlight. So the first thing we're going to do is hit the import option, and I'm going to select my own file. Now I've created one in my GPO backup folder, and I'm going to import this GP report.xml. It will show that it's being processed, and then it will show that it's been imported. I can then go ahead and close that option, and it's going to start giving me details straight away. Now before we jump into looking at some of the details deeper of this import, I want to take you into my actual report that was generated. So this is the XML file, and as you can see, as we go down the page here, you're going to see that basically what it's imported is a computer GPO here, and it's got a number of settings. So the type of things that this group policy is looking at is clear text password, lockout bad count, for example, minimum password age. So what we're trying to achieve here is understand these group policy objects that we set within our own Active Directory environment, be it hybrid or not. We're looking to see and analyze whether these actually can be migrated within Microsoft Intune, so they're supported and we can easily migrate or replace that functionality within Azure AD rather than Active Directory. So if we pop back into Intune here, and I'm going to click on the support. Firstly, let's highlight the fact that it's showing that we have 33% of these policies that are supported by MDM, and there's some unknown settings as well. It will give you the import, and it will say that it's targeted to Active Directory or not. Okay, so it says here default domain policy. So it's already giving you the group policy name and the target where it's aimed at. So I can now click on the options here just to give you a bit more detail. And as we went through in the actual XML file, it's now giving you a clear definition of what these settings are within the group policy. We've got 15 records, and straight away you can see which settings are supported. So what this does, it gives you an indication as to which policies you may want to migrate into Azure AD, and also do some planning to look at whether the others that aren't supported, whether you actually need them or not. It's a good chance to actually go through that analysis. It may be that you can get away with the majority of the policies that are supported, and for sure there's going to be more support coming along the line very soon. You're also getting some additional details here, which gives you a clear indication of the values that are set within these settings, the scope of these settings, the minimum OS, the CSP name, and also you've got the mapping. So if you were looking to migrate and get the CSP details, you've got that information here. Next, what I want to do is go into reports. So if you go into home again, and then you go into reports option on the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, you will see an option where it says Group Policy Analytics Preview. At this point I can refresh, but I'm going to actually click the reports option first, and then it's basically going to give you view the details about the readiness for group policy for modern management. So this is really giving you that clear indication of what is available for migration. So straight away you can see again your settings that we saw on the previous option. So all the GPO settings that have been imported. Now you may need to create the generate again. It will take a few moments for the details to populate. But this is a different view and a slightly different way of seeing the settings that you've imported. You're going to get a breakdown of the settings that are configured, that are available and basically can be migrated. You've got those that aren't supported, and obviously anything that's deprecated. And if you want to, you can go in and basically select the different stages, if you like, or different types that you want to report or filter against. So go ahead and try that out. Depending on what GPO you import, you're going to get different responses. The other option you'll get is clearly you can export the details here if you need to. It might be part of your backup or your analysis of your environment. But the important and key factor here is that when you're coming to do your planning and assessment of your migration, what I suggest you do, and what Microsoft recommend you do, is not import all your GPOs in one go. Do it bit by bit, import a GPO one at a time, and then evaluate which bits you want to migrate, which ones are available for migration, and see whether it's actually possible to do the migration. It may be that you've got quite a lot of GPOs and you need to take some time in working through these, but some of the top ones are now available that you can migrate into Intune, and it's advisable that you go and replace your configuration for your devices in this way. Now if we pop back to the previous option, so we go into devices and then group policy analytics, we go back to our original screen. If I hit the MDM support, it's going to give you a new option. Now this is a brand new option that Microsoft has made available, and this is a really good step forward, because essentially what it's allowing you to do is take any of those policies or settings that can be migrated, and it was going to allow you to set up a settings catalog policy. Okay, and it's simplifying the process for importing your settings here to allow you then to kind of deploy that down to your devices. Now this wasn't previously available, and it meant that if you wanted to then deploy these policy settings down to your devices, you had to do it manually through a CSP policy setting that you created. But this is taking away a lot of that legwork away and helping you to kind of create this seamlessly. So we're going to go ahead and test this out. So I hit the migrate button, and automatically it's only allowing me to pick those settings that are supported. As you can see, the ones that aren't are grayed out and it doesn't let me select them. Okay, so it's gonna run through a number of steps. It's going to go through the selection of the settings you want to migrate, the configuration, the profile information. You assign it to the users or devices, and then you can review and deploy. So we're going to go ahead and test this, and what I'm going to actually do is select two here. So I'm going to select the maximum password age and the minimum password length. So let's go for those two. Okay, we can see that they're allowing me to select those, so I can set them up as a policy. So automatically within configuration, it's going to tell me what the settings are, and these are the settings that have been imported, if you like, from the GPO that I've imported. But before we go any further, I want to show you my group policy. So on my actual device, I go into the group policy editor. I'm going to look at these settings. Okay, so if I go into Windows settings, then security, account policies, and account policy detail settings here, I've got a maximum password age of 39, and I'm looking to set it to 42, and I've got a minimum password length of 5 characters, and this is looking to set it to 7. Okay, so we should hopefully see results once we've deployed this policy of those being set. Okay, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and go into the profile information. I'm going to call this local password policy. Skip the description. I'm going to go to the group, and in here I've already set up a group which is GPO test users. Okay, so that basically goes through the wizard and what you need to do. By selecting that and then the next, you'll then be able to kind of review and deploy. Now I'm not going to actually deploy because I've already done this and I've tested this out, and I'll show you the results, but that's the process that you would follow. Okay, so if I go back to my devices and then configuration profiles, I have a policy here called local password policy. Okay, now I know this has already been deployed. If I look at the per setting status, I know that it's successfully done the password enabled, expiration, and the length. Okay, so I know that's already deployed. But how do I know that it's deployed on my actual device? Okay, there's two ways effectively you can do this. If you go into your settings on the device, go into accounts, and then your access work or school, within the account you're logged on, click the information button there, and this is where you can set up a synchronization to your device from Intune. You may want to do a hard sync as well from within Intune. You can select the actual device and select sync, and I would advise doing that because depending on where your device is in its update cycle, that could take an hour or two to come through to the device. But I've already done this. Now I can see in some situations you're going to actually see the policy name come through. Okay, but unfortunately I can't actually see it here. Okay, so what do you do next? So the next stage really is if you go into your registry editor, you can look at specific policies that have been set. Okay, so you go into your local machine, then Microsoft, and then go down to the policy manager. Okay, and within here you'll see policies that have been set to the device. Okay, so if I look at the device lock, for example, comes under device lock, I should be able to see these settings now. Okay, so what have I got? I've got the device password expiration, all right, which is one of the settings, and that shows me that has been set to 42, which is our new setting. The other setting that I've deployed is the minimum device password length, and if you remember, it was set to 5, and in the registry here it's now set to 7. Okay, so these are just ways in which you can check through and see whether those policies have been updated on the individual machine. So when you're troubleshooting or kind of fact finding that that's already come through. And in particular, you would only kind of really need to do that if within your synchronization that you've done doesn't show you that policy has come through. We know that it's come through successfully from Intune, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically been installed correctly on the actual device or devices. Now, there is one more thing I just want to cover before we finish here, and that is traditionally group policy, certainly when you're in a hybrid scenario, group policy will take precedence over MDM policy. So if you've got a duplicate policy, a policy you're deploying via MDM, but it already exists from your Active Directory that's deployed to your domain devices, then that will take precedence. Since the movement or COVID-19 and people working from home a lot more, it has meant that a lot of domain devices do not have line of sight to their domain. So how have companies adapted to that? Well, the way in which this has been changed to kind of support that process is now that you can create a policy and deploy it to your devices. Now, there's a number of blogs out there that go through this process to explain it, and this is just one of them, so you might want to look this up yourself. But essentially, what you would need to do is configure something, the MDM wins over group policy setting, and I'll show you how to do this. But ideally what you need to do is set this up first, target your users and devices and send it out before you then import your GPOs from your domain and then decide to migrate them. So let's quickly go through this. If we pop it back into the Endpoint Manager Admin Center, I'm going to go into Devices, then Configuration Profiles. I'm going to create a new profile, select Windows 10 and later, then I'm going to go into Settings Catalog. Okay, create that. I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it MDM wins over GPO, and then I'm going to add the specific setting that I'm looking for. Now you can do a search from all of the settings in the catalog itself, but the one I'm specifically looking for is, as I said, the MDM wins over group policy. So let's do a search on MDM, and automatically I can see there's the policy. Okay, so ControlPolicyConflict, as we were talking about. So I select that, and it will give me the settings underneath that policy. Okay, which is MDM wins over group policy. So I select that specifically, I close that down, and when I select the drop down here, it's going to give me the option for MDM policy is used and the GP policy is blocked. Okay, so this is what you need to establish, because if I quickly go back to the website here, it says in Windows 10 version 1709 and earlier, group policy would override MDM policies. Even in identical policy is configured in MDM. With Windows 10 1803 and beyond, there's a new policy setting called ControlPolicyConflict that includes a policy of MDM wins over GP, where the preference of which policy wins can be controlled. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to make sure that the MDM policy will win and take precedence over the group policy. So if I go back to my endpoint manager, we've set that up. MDM policy is blocked. I then go through and assign that policy to my users or groups and then deploy that first. So I would advise doing that first, and then basically checking that that policy has been deployed to your device. If I go back onto into my settings and look at accounts where I've synchronized this device specifically, it does actually show that ControlPolicyConflict has been deployed. Okay, so I can specifically see that that policy been deployed. I can also see the actual deployment of it within the reports of that policy. So MDM wins over GP there, and I can view the report. Okay, and it's telling me that it's been deployed to my specific device. So I know that's happened, and I've checked the settings. So go ahead and check that and give the migration of your GPOs a test for yourself and see how you get on. So thanks very much for watching. There were a few people in the community that have asked to see this video content, so hopefully you found that useful. If you do have any comments, please let me know. But for now, see you again soon.